The 2026 World Cup has exposed the painful reality gap between historical rivals South Korea and Japan. You only have to look at the viral headlines and trending videos taking over Korean sports media right now to feel the absolute panic. The Korean football community is having a collective existential crisis, flashing titles like watching Japan's World Cup win, massive World Cup win, former national team players hit by a hard reality check, or the real reason why the technical gap with Japanese soccer will only keep widening. Soon-Yong watches Japan play and sounds the alarm, a furious criticism of the Korean football system. So what happened? Well, in Mexico, Japan recently put on a clinical masterclass, dominating Tunisia 4-0 to secure a significant group stage advantage. Meanwhile, South Korea's national team, under the controversial leadership of manager Hong Myung-bo, suffered a frustrating 1-0 defeat against Mexico, leaving fans very anxious about whether the squad will even survive the group stage. Now, historically speaking, the football rivalry has been an emotionally charged battleground. And I remember growing up, I remember literally crying whenever Korea lost a crucial soccer or baseball game to Japan. And back then, a sports defeat to our neighbor, Japan, felt like a national tragedy. Because for decades, Korea was the undisputed dominant football power in Asia. But over the last 20 years, while Japan systematically built up their youth infrastructure and long-term vision, the tables turned. Korea increasingly relied on sheer grit and mental fortitude, and a heavy dependence on superstars like Park Ji-sung and Son Heung-min to paper over the structural cracks and pull off, desperate results. And the immediate aftermath of these recent World Cup matches has brought an entirely new sentiment to the surface inside South Korea, which is a volatile mix of professional envy and defeatism. And surprisingly, the bitterness isn't actually aimed at Japan's success. Instead, the Korean public, the media, and even the country's greatest football legends are using Japan's organized performance as a mirror to ruthlessly criticize the systematic failures of South Korea's own domestic institutions. So in this video, we're going to look at the unfiltered observations made by Korean football icons like Park Ji-sung, Ki Seung-yong, and Koo Ja-chul. And we will analyze the viral public frustration demanding a total overhaul of the Korean Football Association. And we will explore how this sports crisis directly reflects a much deeper generational exhaustion within modern South Korean society. All right. Now, before the tournament even kicked off, the warning signs were already being laid bare. So appearing on a World Cup preview show, former national team midfielder anchor Ki Seung-yong shared a cold truth based on his first-hand experience playing against Japanese clubs. He pointed out that the gap between the two countries has already become significant, making any immediate matchup an uphill battle for Korea. While Korea has great individual talent, he noted that it cannot compete with Japan's collective momentum and the stability of their manager, Hajime Moriyasu, who has been allowed to systematically build his squad over a span of 8 years. Now, those pre-tournament fears quickly turned into an undeniable proof during the group stage. Working as a live TV commentator at the stadium in Mexico, legendary former captain Park Ji-sung watched Japan comfortably cruise past Tunisia. And Park Ji-sung openly admitted that the match didn't even feel like the high-pressure environment of a World Cup. It looked as relaxed as a casual, friendly match because every single Japanese player knew their exact role and they executed it perfectly. He noted that while Korea possesses highly talented stars, the team suffers from unpredictable waves of inconsistency. And Park Ji-sung candidly confessed that seeing Japan prove exactly why they can succeed on the world stage made him deeply envious, though he tried to offer a silver lining, that if Japan can build a system to reach this level, Korea is fully capable of doing the same. But the gap became even more painful during a watch-along on the popular YouTube channel Shoot for Love, where Ki Seung-yong and fellow veteran player Koo Ja-chul watched the Japanese game. Right from the opening whistle, Japan effortlessly bypassed Tunisia's aggressive forward pressure, and Ki Seung-yong pointed out that with just two quick, precise passes, Japan could slice through the midfield and move the ball from one side of the pitch to the other. And he noted how Japan consistently flooded the opponent's penalty area with 6 or 7 players at a time, which is a basic numbers game that dramatically increases the mathematical odds of scoring. As the game progressed, the technical divide only grew. Koo Ja-chul was left amazed by the precision of Japanese defenders, who routinely delivered difficult, low-driven passes straight into tight gaps to ignite the attack. And Ki Seung-yong marveled at how fluid the teamwork looked, emphasizing that no matter who had the ball, an open teammate instantly appeared nearby to provide an easy passing option. And even when Tunisia dropped into a deep, 5-back defense, which is a highly defensive setup designed to completely crowd the backline and block all space. But Japan's players consistently found small pockets to exploit. The breaking point for the Legends came during Japan's third goal. So the play began deep in Japan's own territory, transitioning into a crisp, low 30-meter pass through the lines that was immediately redirected into a lethal one-on-one chance. And watching this seamless sequence, Ki Seung-yong was visibly frustrated, slamming his fist on the table and asking a simple, bitter question: why do these guys play football so well? And his fellow veteran Koo Ja-chul agreed, pointing out that Japan plays with absolute confidence, aggressively passing through tight spaces. And he admitted that even though Koreans inherently hate praising their rivals, Japan has built an incredibly organized team that demands respect. Now, what truly alarmed these legends wasn't just the tactical brilliance, but the terrifying reality of Japan's roster depth. So in sports, depth refers to the quality of the backup players who sit on the bench. And Japan achieved this historic 4-goal World Cup performance while missing their absolute biggest European stars like Kaoru Mitoma and Wataru Endo due to injuries. But despite missing their best talent, Japan's overall performance didn't drop at all. Ki Seung-yong emphasized that this is where the true dangerous difference lies. If South Korea were to suddenly lose their core stars like Son Heung-min or Lee Gang-in, the entire team would plunge into an immediate crisis. And he warned that this isn't just about winning or losing a single match. It is a structural gap, and it's a big structural gap. And he cautioned the public not to get complacent the next time Korea happens to scrape a random victory over Japan, warning that if the domestic system isn't fundamentally reformed right now, the damage will become completely irreversible in 10 years. And according to Koo Ja-chul, the issue cannot be fixed just by sending more individual players overseas to Europe. The route is foundational. So he argued that the real solution lies at the grassroots level, calling for a total overhaul of how youth coaches are trained in South Korea so that elementary, middle, and high school programs can establish a high, standardized blueprint for teaching young players spatial awareness and basic teamwork. Now, on online communities and video comment sections, public reaction is completely aligned with these legends, but the tone is much sharper, mixing exhaustion with the dark sense of humor. The thousands of fans are pointing out the core difference between the two football federations, Japan and Korea, claiming that while Japan's leadership prioritizes the development of the sport, South Korea's leadership is only focused on protecting its own personal interest. And the phrase, entrenched cartel, has gone viral. Fans are furious that the decision makers in power seem completely blind to this structural decline. So a bittersweet quote has been circulating among fans that perfectly capture the tragedy. That is, South Korean football infrastructure is a total disaster. But every once in a while, the heavens look down and hand us one genius player from the sky. And this has led to the narrative of the praying nation, contrasting a country like Japan, which spends decades investing in an objective, systematic foundation, versus South Korea, which throws away long-term planning and simply prays to the heavens that another miraculous genius like Son Heung-min will emerge to save them. And netizens are looking at world-class Korean players who shine at European clubs only to look completely lost and powerless the moment they put on the national jersey. And the blame is laid squarely on coaching incompetence and administrative chronism, which is a toxic culture where players are often selected based on personal connections and networks rather than tactical fit. And the traditional fiery anger of the rivalry has transformed into complete apathy. Fans are openly writing that calling Japan a rival anymore feels like an insult to Japan, accepting the reality that while their neighbors are consistently evolving, South Korea is actively regressing. Now, the underlying reason this sports debate has become so explosive is because it reflects the exact generational frustration that young Koreans feel toward their own society. The difference in how these two nations develop talent reflects a foundational divide in social philosophy. So on one hand, they say you have a system that focuses on building a baseline capability, ensuring that the general public and infrastructure elevate together over a 30-year span. On the other hand, you have the deeply familiar Korean approach, picking a tiny handful of elite individuals at a young age, pouring all national resources into them, and expecting them to carry the entire weight of a broken system on their backs. And this is exactly where football intersects with the broader reality of modern South Korean society. This deep skepticism toward internal systems and the intense resentment toward entrenched establishment is not a localized sports crisis. It is in fact a direct reflection of a wider cultural exhaustion. You can see this exact same institutional fatigue in recent national headlines, most notably the heavy controversies surrounding the Central Election Management Committee and the public outrage over the unprecedented local election ballot shortages, where administrative failures and a lack of accountability have severely shaken public trust. So when you connect these pieces together, the picture becomes clear. The agonizing contrast between Japan's decades-long 100-year vision of methodical, patient planning and South Korea's erratic, star-reliant approach is being processed by the public as a symptom of a much larger societal issue. There's a profound, growing fatigue inside Korea regarding how its major establishments, whether sports federations or public agencies, are managed by those in power who simply don't care. And fans realize that fixing this won't happen overnight. It will require a decade of painful trial and error to completely dismantle the existing cartels and rebuild from the ground up. And ultimately, the collective anxiety gripping Korean fans and citizens isn't just about losing a football match to a historical rival. It is a urgent demand for structural reform and this realization that a society cannot thrive on individual miracles alone. It needs a system that actually works. So, the question becomes this: can a culture so heavily rooted in individual miracles successfully transition into a patient, system-driven society? And if we were to truly dismantle entrenched cartels, quote unquote entrenched cartels, and rebuild our foundations from the ground up, are we actually prepared to endure the decade of painful trial and error required to see it through? And for you guys, international viewers, tuning in from around the world, how does this look in your own country? Does your nation's sports federation or broader society rely on long-term methodical planning? Or do you also find yourself simply praying for a generational talent to step up and save the day? Is there a similar frustration with institutional gatekeepers where you live? Let me know your thoughts in the comments and see you in the next video. And let's keep things respectful and classy. Thank you guys. Peace and love. Bye-bye.